You're listening to the We Are Libertarians Podcast Network. Find all of our shows at wearelibertarians.com. You're listening to the We Are Libertarians Network. Learn more at wearelibertarians.com.
Welcome to the Boss Hog of Liberty podcast. This is episode number 314 of East Central's favorite podcast. Jeremiah Morrell, joined by executive video producer, audio engineer, and life coach Zach Burcham. I
am not a life coach. I'm barely.
You're a youth sports coach, and you're Dakota's coach as he's embarking in his greatest challenge this week.
All these signs of questionable
greatest challenge of the week,
practices.
or is this your greatest challenge? Is coming up this week.
Probably my greatest physical challenge.
All right.
So my forever co-host, Dakota Davis.
Today's episode features Mr. Joe Lansinger and David Sadler. They are running for the Newcastle City Judge position in the city elections. And we're going to be talking to them. Really, this is going to also be an informational episode because we've never had judge candidates on the show before. So we're going to be delving into...
There's probably a reason for that.
We've never had two people willing to run for the office at the same time in the history of the program.
I'll be honest, I did ask. I was like, they're running against each other? Like, I think I've only ever voted to keep or not keep a judge.
Or not keep judges. Yeah. But yeah, we're going to be talking to them about the position of the judge itself, and then we're also going to be talking about what has motivated them to run for the position. I have a question in here about what guiding principles they will be using to make decisions as they're sitting with the gavel in hand. And we're just going to be talking about, it's going to be a good discussion. We'll leave it at that. Make sure you stick around to the end because it's going to be jam-packed.
This show is about our lives in rural Indiana. We're here to push your boundaries and make you think as individuals. Sometimes we'll provoke you. Other times we'll make you laugh. But hopefully you always learn something new. Each and every week we give you an extra 15, 20 minutes of bonus content on the old Patreon, which is how this show gets paid for. That's how we make the air each and every week. And if you do appreciate the existence of this program and want to help us out as we get through the candidate series, jump on our website, bosshogliberty.com. There's a little button to click on for Patreon, and you can sign up at any level. If you did watch this week's, you've learned that Dakota doesn't like drawings.
I do not. That's true. I enjoy some drawings. I enjoy the drawings that my son makes for me. But that's,
You only want drawings that will fit on your refrigerator wall.
Correct. Yeah. I don't want drawings that I have to put too much thought into. We'll put it that way. If you want to hear what that's about, then you can support us on Patreon. If you sign up at any level, then you get access to that. It starts out at $5 a month, and it goes all the way to $50 a month. You get access to the show notes ahead of time, so those people on Patreon, they've already seen the questions that we're going to be asking our judge candidates tonight. And then you also get access to a bonus episode that happens about 20 minutes every week that we also do with our guests sitting here with us. And then you get some other bonus content, and, we send out gifts occasionally. Usually we send out a gift every year. Last Christmas, we sent out T-shirts for all of our Patreon members. So if you do sign up at $50 or more a month, you get a shout-out at the front of every episode. And those folks are Miss Christy Avery, Mr. Jonathan Phillips, and then, of course, Mr. Anthony Meyer.
And I think, let's see, Christy was hosting some sort of a major event tonight in Fort Wayne. See, we track your life activities if you join at this level. Anthony has some sort of a thing we're praying for. I don't remember what it was, but it was severe. And John has a golf tournament this weekend, which I think he still has had people signing up for. So if you want to get involved in that and learn about what John's up to.
There's no way I'm golfing this weekend.
Check it out.
I'm running 13 miles. There's no way I could.
Are you going to stop with 0.1 to go?
Yeah. I'm just going to call it.
He's doing 13, and he's laying down.
A block away. Be like, I just can't think I can make it.
I only signed up for 13.
Where's the finish line? Because if it's down in front of the courthouse, there's a 90% chance Dakota stops and just goes in the Elks Club.
I thought, like, Maybe I'll just walk to the tap house.
He's just done. I've done enough.
Right afterwards, I'll just go and get a beer. Alder was like, "You're not going to want to drink after that." And I was like, "We've been married long enough for you to know me."
Best beer I ever had was after running, well, not running, but walking a half marathon. My wife and I did one in San Diego.
Oh, wow.
It's hilly.
Oh, yeah.
And I had to walk it because I got a stress fracture training. Oh. And all my toenails fell out as well. So
San Diego sounds like a tough town.
Are they back?
They're back. They came back.
The voters need to know if Joe has his toenails back before they make a decision
back.
in November. This
was in law school. I was
a revelation.
a different person then.
So we have Joe and we have David. Joe, you're running as the Republican, and David, you're running as the Democrat in this race. Joe, you're also the incumbent right now.
That is correct.
Let's start off with you guys telling us a little bit about yourselves, your education, life experiences, and things like that. David, we can start with you.
Sure.
You're ready?
Yeah. So I graduated Newcastle High School here in 1990 and went across the state to DePaul University over in Greencastle. Graduated there in 1994. Went up to I always wanted to live in Chicago, so I did go to law school up in Chicago and practiced up there for a few years, and then came back to Indiana.
You take the Illinois bar?
I did. I took
Really?
the Illinois bar and I passed 2 bar exams. Wow. Yeah. Well, actually, me and my cat did. My cat, who I inherited from one of my old roommates, his name was Ed.
Okay.
And he helped me study. He laid all over my books and papers every time I studied. So, so he was right there with me. We passed both bar exams with Ed. And, it was a good time.
How long did you live in Chicago? I've always thought,
So I moved up there
cool.
after college in 1994 and stayed up there until 1999. I came back here. My mom was not well, so I came back here and took the bar exam here.
You got back just in time to reset the computers for the Y2K.
Yes. That was such a big thing back then.
I remember I was so disappointed when it didn't.
I know.
just
Nothing
all go to hell.
happened. I was ready for it.
I wasn't ready, but I wanted to see the chaos.
Yeah.
Wait, you got it in 2020.
Yeah.
20 years later, you got the chaos.
Yeah.
All right. And Joe Lansinger, tell us about yourself and your brief background.
Well, I'm from Newcastle also. I went to graduated from Newcastle back then, Newcastle Chrysler High School, Walter P. Chrysler High School. And
We always know how old a guest is how they describe the high school
Yeah.
and what was called at the time.
well, when they want to change the name, it was quite an ordeal. Remember that, Dave?
I do.
People were losing their minds over that.
I mean, there are things to lose their mind about, and that's clearly one of them.
It is. But I graduated in 2001, went to Hanover College down in southern Indiana. The governor of Indiana is another Hanover alum.
Former vice president
Former
is
vice president.
the former mayor of Rushville, John McCain, the Boss Hog alum.
Both of the sitting judges in Rushville as well.
You're all Hanover people, eh?
Yep, and Woody Harrelson. In fact, Woody Harrelson was in. He lived in the same fraternity house that I lived in.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
Is there a picture of that so everybody knows?
No, it's like in these fraternities and sororities, they have the composite picture, and he would have been there. Shoot, don't quote me on it. I think it was early 80s. And back then, everyone was wearing these real wide ties and wide jackets and collars, and they all had mustaches and perms, except for Woody. He just had, like, if you came from another planet and you looked at it, you'd just say, this guy, he's going to be something. He's going to be something different. And
I was going to ask the question, but you and I graduated high school the same year. So it would have to be reruns of Cheers. They wouldn't have had Cheers on because it was already off the air by the time we were done with high school, and you would have been in college. But I just picture Woody Harrelson on just loop on the TV in the
Brother
frat house.
Woody.
All right, so that's Hanover. You
I graduated from Hanover in 2005, and that's when I got married to my wife, Jennifer Lansinger. She graduated from Newcastle in 2000.
Older lady.
4 months. I started school late. I did 2 years of Little Friends. And so I was actually 19 and a half when I graduated.
Oh, dang.
I drove to the middle school. So
when you graduate middle school, do you have a senior's parking spot there as well?
The problem with driving to the middle school is there was no student parking, so you had to park in Baker Park. I always hoped that I got hit as a pedestrian walking from the park to the school. Not enough to become injured, but enough to say, "Come on, let me park. Let me park here. There's enough spaces."
So you were a litigious lawyer even back then.
Well, I never got hit, but I went after my wife and I got married the summer of 2005 and went straight to law school at the IU in Indianapolis. Went there for 2.5 years. Graduated early because I hated it, and so I took night classes and went during the summer so I can get out earlier. I took the February bar and been practicing here in Newcastle since 2008.
All right. And then I guess each of you can weigh in on this, but I want to hear the 10,000 foot view of what does a city court do? I guess and why do they exist, and what kind of things flow through a city court?
Right.
Because I know that you've both served as the city judge in the past, and it's a politically elected office, but as folks are electing a mayor and they're electing a county council or a city council rather, and their clerk treasurer, they get to the judge's spot, and I'm not sure that people have put that much thought into it, and that's the biggest thing that I wanted to hear about tonight to start.
Right. Well, city court, first of all, is a court of limited jurisdiction. So your county courts, most of them are courts of general jurisdiction. They can handle all kinds of cases. Newcastle City Court was based upon our city ordinance and our city code here, and it created the court. And so the city court here is designed to interpret and make decisions based on that city ordinance that the city usually brings against its citizens for various different things. And it's up to the city court judge at that point to, first of all, interpret the ordinance, and then at that point determine whether or not the city has made their case, and then render a decision.
All right. Any other explanation for the city court, Joe?
Well, it's interesting because Indiana, Dave's right in that the city courts and town courts also have pretty limited jurisdiction. We used to have Knightstown Town Court.
Right.
City court could have criminal jurisdiction, but the city, essentially the prosecutor's office, doesn't want to file cases there, and I don't want them there. So I'm running for my 4th term, so I've seen quite a bit there at the court, but it's limited to the way that the mayor and the city council and the city attorney they've essentially made it to just deal with city ordinance violations. So we could do infractions like traffic tickets, but we don't handle those for the most part. It's just ordinances. 99% of it is issues dealing with the building inspector's office, where somebody they have a bunch of junk and debris, and that's a legal term. The city code says junk and debris, or another.
So a judge would have to interpret what that
what is.
exactly means.
Well, I had that because another one was rank vegetation. If there's rank vegetation, and the city did years ago, they filed a case, and somebody had some scrubby trees in between their house and the neighbors, and I said, I mean, I'm not here to say that this tree, is any better than that tree. So the tree stands.
That's rank.
The tree stands. So those, and then cases involving animal control, mostly with people. A lot of people don't know, in the city of Newcastle, all dogs and all cats have to be licensed with the city and vaccinated for rabies. So we get a lot of cases where folks have not updated their rabies vaccinations, not updated their city tags, And generally, the animal shelter sends warning letters, but if they end up not doing it, they cite them in
Every
court.
year you got to renew that license.
Yes.
If you don't, you could be fined for that. And
There are some litigants that I see every year.
How much does it cost to own a cat in the city of Newcastle?
$20 a year.
yeah, it's not much.
$20 to own a cat in the city.
You mean like the city tag?
Yeah.
I think it's for dog and cat. It's $10 for the license.
Is it per animal?
Yes, and if they're not altered, spayed or neutered, then I think it's $30.
It depends on the cat's pronouns, I think.
As a dog owner, I got a letter that I think it was like 2013. Well, you didn't renew your license, and I sent back a nasty letter saying, "Hey, my dog's died this year."
I had someone bring what was purported to be the ashes,
Some
of the
cremains.
dog in a paper bag.
You can have it back.
He asked me if I wanted to see it.
Did
I
you
said,
take it into
"That's
the
okay."
evidence locker?
I did not.
And I believe the rabies vaccine is what, $50 if you
It
do
depends
at the
on where
animal
you
shelter?
go. At the shelter, it might be. A lot of people do the low cost shelter or low cost vaccines, like at Tractor Supply or Rural King.
So what do you do when you have free range cats that just keep showing up on your porch?
Well, you're not supposed to feed them. Once you feed them, well, like from a practical standpoint, once you feed them, they're yours.
They're yours.
But
You're
from a
taking care
legal
of them.
standpoint, if you're feeding them regularly, then that's your cat now. Got to get a license. Got to get it vaccinated.
Got to watch out
Makes
for those
sense.
alley cats.
Got to put it on a leash. You don't have to put it on. Dogs have to be leashed or in the fence all the time. I think maybe cats are supposed to too. I've never had that come before me.
Is there a
Cats running large.
Yeah.
is there a limit on the leash size?
No, but there's a limit on how many animals you can have without getting a kennel permit.
The gentleman that I took my German Shepherd to, he trained German Shepherds, and he had his dogs trained so well they would never break from his side.
Okay.
They wouldn't break from his stride, but where he lived, I believe he was in Connorsville. They had leash laws there, so he was also a leather worker, and he made these little 6-inch leashes that had a knot in the end that just hung from their collars while he walked them.
So you didn't say you have to hold a leash. You just have to have a leash.
Yeah,
Self-walking
They have a
dogs.
leash.
So it's wildly interesting. So how often does the court
That's
function?
the first time I've ever heard anyone describe the city court business as wildly interesting.
Well, it sounds like it's 90% domesticated animals. It sounds like is the biggest responsibility. You don't, I know a lot about the Hagerstown Town Court because we're friends with the judge there, and she performed my wedding. But the city court I've had next to no involvement with so far.
That's probably a good thing.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, you can't touch me. I live in the county.
Well,
That's true.
a lot of people don't know that the
Just
city
by
court even
houses,
exists
I can
unless
see.
they get cited in.
I can see the city from my front porch.
Okay. All right.
They figured it out quickly then.
Yeah. But if you own property in the city, then that property has to be up to code, and so a lot of it has to do with the condition outside. Don't want to have there are limits to how tall your grass can be. Limits to having junk out front. Can't have a toilet seat. Just in the lawn. At least not
Couches
for
on the
too
front
long.
porch.
Couches on the. And now I'm lenient when it comes to that because.
Okay.
I'm not going to say I'm not going to say this person can have their porch furniture, but this person can't because one person prefers it to be upholstered.
Is this our
and
first
one wants
policy
it to be-
disagreement of the night?
I think it could be. I think it could be.
The couch.
If you could buy it at Walmart, yes. If it came from if it came originally from Meyer
Richmond Furniture
Furniture,
Outlet.
then no, because it was an indoor grade.
But a lot of it is just junk, or people that have a lot of trash out front. And it's mostly driven by neighbors complaining.
So I'd imagine you guys do see like parking violations then. So
Every now
junk
and then.
cars that get parked on the
Yes.
road or abandoned, that kind of a thing.
Abandoned vehicles, we do get a decent number of. Most of the time, it's when someone's got a vehicle that just sits in their driveway. It's on its rims. It's sitting there for months at a time. Then they'll get a ticket for that. Because there's a city ordinance about having an inoperable or unlicensed vehicle on the property, and so
It's going to be moved so often, too.
Yeah.
So tell us, and we'll start with you, David. The motivations for running. I assume that I haven't looked on Indiana Finance Gateway, but I assume this pays hundreds of thousands of dollars a year.
It's a lucrative position.
Yeah, so is the merit board. Lucrative is there's a comma in the number.
Yeah.
So tell us about the motivations to want to run for city judge.
Well, having grown up here, I love our town. Absolutely love our town, and I really love what they've done with it. This is the best our town has looked at since I've been here, and
it's because they solved the large trash problems. What I heard.
Well,
that's what Zach always tells us.
Yeah. Thanks, Zach.
You mean the green toters?
Yeah, the green totes are well. Yeah, no, I mean, I love our town, and really, quite frankly, this position does not pay much at all, but it's a way for me to give back to the community and uphold our values here.
All right, and Joe, you're seeking a fourth term, so 12
That is correct.
Going for your lucky 13.
What I always tell people when they ask what I like most about being city court judge, and I just say it's the unmitigated power that I have. Actually, I'd put that on. I had to do a survey the state judicial office sends, and they said, "What do you find most rewarding about serving as city court judge?" And I said, "The unmitigated power." So I was expecting to get a letter back that says, "Mr. Lansinger,
It's unbecoming of an officer."
There's plenty of mitigation to your power.
So,
but I enjoy doing it. It's something that really the first time I ran, I'm trying to think what that would have been. Well, whatever 12 years ago was. It was the first election that Mayor York was in also. But I wanted to do it for the reasons that Dave described. And the reasons that I still want to do it are because I enjoy doing it. I think I do a good job. And I'm fair with people. I think for the most part, people come away from city court feeling like they've been treated with respect.
So is there a prosecutor when there's something that comes before the city court? Is that like the city attorney serving as the prosecutor?
So Joel Harvey is the Newcastle city attorney. He's the one who usually files their cases on their behalf. And he's, as Joe had mentioned, he's usually representing the building commissioner or the animal shelter folks. But yeah, he's the actual attorney that files the case on behalf of the city.
Okay. And then do folks normally represent themselves when they have a case come forward, or do they have representation?
Almost always they represent themselves.
Yeah.
I mean,
you'll get an attorney there.
Yeah, but not very often. I mean, I would say fewer than 1% of cases do they have an attorney. And
this is a monthly occurrence? Or
it is Friday afternoons, but it's not every Friday. We have a set. We have a calendar set out. Probably averages to be three Fridays a month.
All right.
Man, that's one of the things I got to change. Friday afternoon. We got to move this to Monday afternoon.
That's probably only get 1% with attorneys.
That's how it used to be. I moved it to Friday.
I know. When I was city court judge back in 2006, we was elected then, and we definitely did not do Friday afternoons.
I don't know what attorney wants to be working on a Friday afternoon.
I was going to say, that's probably why you only got 1% attorneys on a Friday. That's because it's like...
this is on Friday at 2? I cannot be your attorney.
Yeah, sorry, I've got a conflict.
Can't possibly do that.
Tea times at 1:15.
So I know for a fact that on Friday afternoons you can find some attorneys at a local establishment right down the road here. So, Joe, real quick, what do you think is the most important quality for someone to look for in a city judge?
I think it's the most important quality to look for in any kind of judge, and that's to be a good listener, to have patience, to have understanding of what's coming before you, to understand that the person in front of you might be. Is most likely to be in very different circumstances, background than me, and so be able to take that into consideration. I think that is what makes a good judge. And then in city court, the I mean, obviously there's a lot more to it than just those things. But in city court, for a lot of people, it's the first or only experience they have with the judicial system. And so it's kind of it's important to treat people with respect, to give them a good impression of what our American judicial system is all about. And so even though it's on a very small level, it's still the same. I mean, the same rules of procedure, the same rights that people have, due process rights apply in Newcastle City Court as they are in federal court. I mean, of course, there's different rules, but the same basic rights are still there. And for a lot of people, that's their only experience with court. So I don't want to say I want to make it a good experience, but I don't want to make it
You want to be professional.
a bad experience.
All right. And to David Sadler?
Well, first of all, you better know what the law is. And you better know the precedent that's come before it and how that's been interpreted by other courts. And, you know, our courts, that's our system. You have to use precedent. So if once you've studied the law and learned it, then you learn how to interpret it. At that point, you know, you have to be a good listener. You have to be fair to both sides. And quite frankly, if I've heard one concern about our situation, it's that, you know, a lot of these things get dragged out. And I mean, one of the things that I would do as city court judge, again, is hold people accountable. If the city has proved their case and we found that there's been a violation, an order will be issued and you will be held accountable.
So the old saying is that a law is only as good as what it is enforced. And I'm finding from what you guys are talking about with the city ordinances, the judge has, you said unmitigated power, but the judge has a lot of authority whenever it comes to enforcing the city ordinances.
Yes.
Right? So
Can you get a jury trial in city court?
You do have a right to it, but we don't have the facility for it. So if a jury trial, and that's one thing when I advise people of their rights, I do advise them that they do have a right to a jury trial. They have to make that they have to make that request in a certain way. But if they do, we just venue it to the circuit court.
Yeah, just transfer.
Because there's not enough. I mean, we don't have the facility for it, and it's not practical to have a jury trial there because one thing about city and town courts is if someone wants to appeal, it's not. It's what's called an appeal de novo, so they start over in circuit court. So let's say somebody gets a speeding ticket in a city court and they lose. And they decide, well, I'll use a better example. This is something that came out of Knightstown, town court. Guy gets arrested because Knightstown did criminal cases. It was for mischief, which is one of my favorite names of the law, for mischief, because he was driving his lawnmower through his gravel, so that the gravel would hit the neighbor's siding and damage it. He goes to
mischievous.
Yes, it is very mischievous. And so he goes to city court. He has Knightstown court. He has a trial. He's convicted. Judge sentences him. I think it was 60 days in the Henry County Jail. This was not his first round of
mischievous activity.
And so he appeals to the circuit court. And so the circuit court doesn't look at the evidence. They don't look at the record and say, did the judge make the right decision? It starts fresh. It's a whole new trial. They hear the evidence all over again. And in this case, the judge who heard it the second time found this fellow guilty and sentenced him to 180 days in the Henry County Jail. So
didn't work well.
Sometimes you get the justice that you ask for.
You win some, you lose some.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So, David, you mentioned that staying on top of precedents that's set before is really important for a judge. And also, as we're talking about city ordinances changing, things are constantly changing with laws. What can a city judge do best to make sure that they're staying up on top of anything that's happening and any changes that are going on?
Well, first of all, you you got to follow city council and make sure that you're up to date on what the ordinance is. Of course, every month.
No, we heard Aaron Dickin tried to ban smoking across the entire city.
Oh dear. Okay. Well, I don't think that would go very well here in Newcastle, but certainly in public buildings that's probably. But as a judge, that's not our job to make legislation or make ordinances. Our job is to interpret the ordinances the best way we can with our knowledge, with our experience, and render a fair decision. So it's definitely different than a mayor's job that enforces it, or the city council's job that puts forth the legislation. This is more the judicial side that's interpreting those actions and determining if people are following them.
So and this isn't in the notes, I apologize because I just thought
That's
about
okay.
it. But the Marion County prosecutor had said that he didn't agree with marijuana laws, right? So
Right.
he wasn't going to prosecute any of those.
Right.
So is there a check, like we have a system of check and balances in our government, is there some kind of check to where you can't, Judge David Sadler can't say, I don't agree that you shouldn't be allowed to smoke in public parks, so I'm going to just dismiss all of those cases that come in front of me?
That is definitely not the job of a judge. That is the job of the legislature or Congress, or in this particular case, the city council. And our job is to interpret that and rule on those laws that they have passed. I certainly would not be an active judge where I'm determining that some ordinance passed by the city council is not appropriate. That's just not a judge's job.
You have anything to add?
I will say, as Dave keeps talking about interpreting the law, and he's right to some respect, but as far as the city ordinance goes, we're not talking about in the Magna Carta here
That's true.
that we got to put our heads to the down and really try to figure out what was the intent.
You're not trying to find out
what was the original intent of the framers.
What did
of
the
this.
comma mean about
Yeah.
Right.
So it's either
pile of rubbish?
And so for city court, it's a lot of it is either the dog's vaccinated or it's not. Either the dog has a license or it's not. There's this code as far as what constitutes a kennel. You have to have a kennel permit if you have more than 5 animals. So you either have 5 animals or you don't.
Right.
And in fact, we had a trial. This was years ago, and a woman said, "No, I don't have 5 dogs. I only have 3." And so we had a bench trial. At a bench trial, the city puts on the evidence, and then the defendant puts on their evidence. And the city's first exhibit was a picture of 5 white huskies in the doorway of this woman's house. And then there's not a whole lot you can say. Or no, the limit, it was 6 because the limit's 5. So she said, so that was that. You either have the number or you don't. Similar to speeding, you're either over the speed limit or you're not. And the burden of proof on these is low. It's a preponderance of the evidence. So the city just has to prove that it's more likely than not that the person committed the violation. I agree with Dave that there's some interpretation to some of it, but it's not as much within the city code as one might expect.
You guys ever see anybody found to be harboring chickens in city limits?
The funny thing is, I know people that have chickens. I'm not one of them, but I know people that do. And if their neighbors don't care, the city's not citing them in because the city probably doesn't know about it.
I've always said it's hard to know if it's a parakeet or a chicken. I don't know.
The complaint starts is from a neighbor.
Absolutely.
Who says, "Hey, I don't like what's going on over there. That's below standards. It's bringing my property value down."
Yeah, but then
So-
the complaint comes right across the street back to Adam sometimes.
So that's generally how a case starts in city court.
So, but do you agree with David with the making a decision?
Oh,
as in
absolutely.
Throwing out cases.
Yeah, because there's some aspects of the city code that I don't think that I would have written it if I was in charge of writing the city code, but it's there, and so I'm gonna
The elected representatives of the people.
yeah.
You know.
But a prosecutor has a lot of a lot more discretion on what they bring, and so that's why you could have a prosecutor say, I'm not gonna bring a marijuana case because we don't agree with the law. Here, the city attorney has broad discretion in what cases they bring. If they issued tickets to every single property in the city limits that was not up to code, I mean, there's not enough hours in the day for us to deal with it.
So Thursday and Friday.
Yeah. be Friday morning and Friday afternoon. So so they have to be selective as far as that goes. But once it's in front of the court, then I cannot be selective as to how I pick or choose how I'm going to enforce a certain provision.
So Dakota has some commentary in here or in the notes about the budget constraints for the city. How is a city court funded, I guess? Is it through court costs? Is that what
Yes.
pays for it? So if you get fined for your 11-inch tall grass and it was only supposed to be 10, then you're going to pay for your court cost. And that's how a city like Newcastle can have a court.
Less, yes. I mean, there may be part of the city budget that goes toward it. I really don't know. I know it's generally funded. I go to a lot of the city and town court judges meetings that are statewide, and some of the city and town courts lose money that the city is paying to keep them afloat. Just for the benefit of having the court, our court does not lose money. We're not there to make money. Some cities have done that and gotten in trouble because the city council thinks, well, we'll set this up and then we'll get fine money and we'll start getting revenue. And that's not the purpose. That's not what the purpose of a court should be. It should be to help enforce the city code.
That should really be out of sight, out of mind. I mean, that's really up to the city council to provide the funding. And but yeah, as Joe said, I don't think our city court's losing money.
Do you feel any of those budget constraints though when you're, like, is there any kind of
I did
impact?
when I was city court judge before. I did not, but that's just something that, as a judge, I'm not. I don't think judges are out there thinking, well, what are we going to do to fund this? I mean, they're just trying to do your job and do it the best way possible.
We did have our budget cut significantly a few years ago because we didn't use all of it, and so they say, well, if you don't use it, you only need half.
Well, that seems reasonable.
No, I get it, but sometimes you don't need a new printer, right. And then when you do, the budget's for it, it's not there.
Well, you just have to. Please.
So Knightstown had a court and it went away. Mm-hmm. A city, I assume cities of Newcastle size, they generally do have courts. It's not an anomaly to have a city court. And if it wasn't here, it would be an additional burden on our county courts.
Well, yes, it would be. And then the city would have to file their actions in either the circuit court 1, 2, or 3, which is what our courts are here in Henry County.
And that would cost the city a lot more. Because it's just
then they would be paying the county court costs and litigants, depending on what the case is about.
So let's talk. Every election cycle, the candidates are talking about transparency in office. Mm-hmm. So, I guess we'll start with how transparent is it now? Like, what's been done recently, and what do you think could be done better? We can start with you, Joe. I think we start with David last.
Well, the court is open to anyone. We have open courts, so if you
it's one more meeting for Zach to attend.
Yes, and so anyone who wants to come and see.
I don't recall the paper ever coming to city court. Have they ever come to a reporter? Okay,
every now and then, not that often, but there's been some.
Only when it's a big one.
Yeah. And which isn't that often. There was one where somebody was dumping a bunch of stuff in one of the culverts out by the new Y, and they moved out of their house and threw everything in the yard, and then the building inspector said you can't have all of your stuff in the yard, so they just took all of it and dumped it in a drainage ditch, and so the mayor was pretty hot about that. He wanted the people to go to jail. I couldn't do that for him. But the paper was there for
that. It could also be
that.
a state crime too.
It could have been, depending on. I mean, you could get DNR in there, IDEM. It could be. We get the feds.
The tire dumping case.
But
give me the number for the EPA.
Yeah, but then there was the Firestone plant. That was an IDEM situation. It was a brown site, is what they ended up declaring. Brownfield. That's it. It might have been a brown site as well. I don't know, but
depends upon the season.
It does, but in that the paper was there for that. But as far as individual, I mean, if someone wanted to come from the Courier every time, I've got no problem with that. You cannot, under Indiana law, broadcasting of courts has generally been prohibited.
Yeah,
it is changing to allow a court, if they want to, they can do it, but it has to be done under certain parameters. Like I don't foresee a situation in Indiana in which it'll ever be allowed for someone to come in with, say, a cell phone or a camera and then just record the proceedings. Right. I can't imagine that happening. I don't think that's allowed in any. Well, I can't speak to other states. I'd be surprised if it's allowed in other states.
So we're not going to get the Providence show that the city judge in Providence that put his old thing on TV.
Well, and see, that's different. If they wanted to be broadcast and it was under those parameters, I think it can be under the new Indiana, under some of the laws that are being floated right now by the Supreme Court. I don't think that. Let's say I wanted to do a Judge Joe show. I don't think I could do that. But I've thought about it. I've thought about it before, but I don't think I could. But they don't want individuals videoing because, one thing, it can be easily edited. So let's say a litigant says XYZ, and so that the person records it, they take out the Y, and then they post that the person's all they said was X and Z, and it's not accurate.
You lose context.
Yes.
As long as judges have authority to determine whether or not a camera could be in your courtroom, I would not allow one.
I did have one. I agree. I wouldn't either. I did have one person, unbeknownst to me, he was videoing from his phone surreptitiously and then later posted it on YouTube. But here's the thing. City court proceedings are not exciting. They're not wildly interesting.
They're pretty short, too.
He got it was up for 2 months and had 2 views, and I think they were both his.
A major case lasts maybe 15, 20 minutes.
And most cases don't go to trial. So a lot of it is their their initial hearings where people will either admit or deny the violation. 90% of the time they admit the violation because, like I said, either your dog's vaccinated or it's not.
I just don't show up.
Then if they have good service on you, then they can ask for a default judgment. And then
What is good service?
Personal service, certified mail, leaving a copy and mailing a copy. A lot of it's personal service that they do. But
they know where you live because that's where the violation's happening.
What's
unless
tricky,
it's a landlord,
No, it's a good question because there are a lot of properties that are owned by individuals out of state, and a lot of them have bought these properties sight unseen with the idea that they're going to make money on it. And
so they buy a house for $5,000, think they're going to flip it. They never cut the grass, and then the city cuts the grass for them for the year, and all of a sudden there's $1,000. And so is it a lien that goes against the property?
It's a lien, and it's a tax lien on it. So they've got to pay that through the assessor's office. Through the assessor's office to remove
before
the
they
lien.
transfer the property to somebody else.
Yeah,
so it's going to have to be paid.
But I've had some where people are going to lose it in a tax sale because of the liens from the city court. But and it's something that's facing, I would say, a lot of cities and towns in Indiana. Is abandoned properties, and there's very little that the city can do about a lot of that. There are people who own from California that own properties in Newcastle that have never seen them. The city attorney can cite them in. I could issue a maximum fine, and it doesn't tear down the dilapidated property. The fine becomes a lien, and that's it. So the enforcement side of things, there aren't a lot of tools for the city just because of the budgetary constraints. I've signed probably 200 demolition orders over the years, and some of them I've signed to demolish the same place more than once. And
A lot of good did the first time, huh?
yeah, exactly. But there's no money there. So until there's a larger budget within the city or grant money,
Give back half your court money. I don't know why they can't get the houses torn down.
Yeah.
David, back to the transparency question for you. Is there anything in the city courts that you think can increase transparency amongst the office?
Well, I mean, the court is open to the public so they can come. But as far as transparency goes, I mean, our court systems are an open. That's one of the things our Constitution protects is open courts, and so anybody can come, anybody can see what's going on. But as far as the enforcement of that, whether it's a demolition or something, that's really that's not the city court's job. You know, they issue a ruling, and then it goes back to
then it's out
the
of your
city.
hands.
Yeah. So I think maybe the transparency issues are maybe at the different branches of government about passing the laws. But if you want to come to city court, come to city court. It's not very exciting, as Joe said.
It has its moments.
Usually.
It has its moments, but most of the time it's not. And it's a lot, like I said, so initial hearings either admit or deny. Most of the time they admit. And then my next question is, all right, how long is it going to take you to get this dog vaccinated?
Right.
How long is it going to take you? And I always tell people, and this Dave said he wouldn't let things drag on, but I do give people an opportunity to make payments on things. A lot of folks don't have the means to pay the court's costs and fines, and it's not a tremendous amount, but what's not a lot to me might be a lot to someone else. So I say, how long is it going to take for you to pay these court costs and fines? And then if they say, well, I get my disability on the 1st, so I'm going to need, can I get 2 months? And I said, all right, we'll set it for review in 2 months. If you need more time, come back and ask for it. And I generally will give people time if they're making an effort. I don't issue warrants for failure to pay. To me, that I think that the sheriff would be banging on my door saying, Joe, our jail's full enough as it is. Right. But that doesn't solve any problems from the way I look at it. And I always tell people if they need to get the animals vaccinated, if they need to get the house taken care of, I say, get that taken care of first. Worry about the court costs later. Get the animal, especially I get on people the most about the vaccinations because that's a matter of public health and safety.
It's a safety issue, right? Yeah. So that's the conversation got me going down the track here. Census.gov, David, says that the average median household income for Newcastle, Indiana is $46,000.
Right.
And 19% of the people that live here are below the poverty line, according to what they have. So there is this balance, I guess, of, hey, you know, the court can fine people, but you also can only get so much from people.
Fines and costs are not the issue. It's the action that needs to be done. If you need to clean up your house, if you need to get up the trash, let's get it done. If I issue an order, I expect it to be followed, period. Fines and costs, sure. We can always have more time, but it's the action that matters. And that's certainly, if I issue an order and tell you got to get something done, I expect it to be done.
All right. What else you got, D squared?
So conflicts of interest and subconscious biases. It's going to happen everywhere, but it's more of an issue in the legal system. You know, is that something that's always on your mind that, you know, of a subconscious bias that you may have? Is it, or if there is a conflict of interest, hey, I've been, you know, good friends with this guy for 10 years and now his dog is unvaccinated and he's in my courtroom. Is there, I mean, I just don't know the process or the system.
Sure. And we live in a small community, so there's going to be a lot of overlap. I've had situations where I have had a client, because I have a private office here in town as well. And so I might have a client for something completely unrelated. We'll say a divorce, or a former client, and then they're in city court for their dog, we'll say. And so I always identify that in open court to the city attorney and to the litigant and say, no, I don't go into my client attorney relationship with the other person, but I say I've represented this person in an unrelated matter. Mr. Harvey, does that raise any concerns for you? Are you fine with me sitting on this case? Likewise with the client. I have had some cases where, in fact, I appointed Dave pro tem for me at one point because I had a case where the actual what was before the city court was the same thing that I was involved with in a juvenile case in Circuit Court 1. And so I said, I can't be the finder of fact in this when it has to do with what I'm representing them for in this other case. And a lot of the times people talk about a conflict of interest, and then there's the appearance of a conflict of interest. And if you read the judicial canons or the Indiana rules of professional responsibility, those are like the ethics rules for judges and attorneys. And there's specifics that say this is where your interpretation comes in because it's very fact specific. But there's some where it's obviously a conflict. Yeah. And the way that the rules say these things are conflicts, these things. And there are some where if you ask 10 people, you gave a scenario and you say, is this a conflict of interest? 9 of them are going to say yes. According to the rules, it's not. But it has the appearance of it. And to me, the appearance of it is just it's the same. If there's an appearance of a conflict, then there's a conflict. Yeah. Because you don't want people to lose faith in the judiciary.
So the tool that you have is that you can appoint another attorney to be the judge in that case.
Yes.
To serve the role.
Yes.
And you want to do that because otherwise it would undermine the legitimacy of your court. If people thought you were doing favors for certain people, that undermines the legitimacy of your rulings, the legitimacy of your court. So
absolutely,
that is the real purpose of the rules of ethics when it comes to especially the judicial canons of ethics. That's why the appearance of an impropriety or an ethics violation is important.
Yeah, it's just as bad as if it's a black and white ethics violation.
So there's some self-checking that has to happen. Is what I'm
For
hearing.
example, I have a billionaire friend, and he's got some properties, and I don't take
I don't
plane
have any
trips.
billionaire friends.
I'm not a billionaire friend.
I've been offered some luxury vacations with him, and I've said no because that gives the impression of impropriety.
Are we talking about this?
I've got another billionaire friend, and he's offered a couple times to buy my mother-in-law a house. And I've said, no, that's because that gives the appearance of impropriety. And so, I mean, it'd be nice. I'm telling you, it'd be nice to go to some of these places.
You know, if you just had a little bit more unmitigated power in your court.
Exactly.
But the truth of the matter is I know a lot of people make jokes about lawyers, but the bottom line is all through law school, every year we have to take ethics classes and be educated on that. And so we're all up to date on those ethics things. So what happens is when a situation comes up, you have alarm bells that go off in your mind, or at least you should have alarm bells that are basic common sense. And you got to have that experience. And I know Joe and I both do. Anytime there's a conflict, whether it's in our private practice or whether it's at city court, we're both on top of that.
Very good. This is the part of the show where we generally get around to, you guys would call it closing statements. We call it final thoughts.
All right.
So anything we forgot anything we left out, normally I tell candidates that this is where they're supposed to ask for money because yard signs aren't free and door-to-door knocking's not free. So, if you've got campaigning to do, this is where you can work that in. But just if you want more information, how do people get more information on you, David?
Well, I don't have a website, or I don't intend on putting out signs or anything. But I mean, certainly, I think people are aware of this race, and I think I'm up to the job. I've been up to the job before, and certainly, I love our town. I love our town. I have a private practice here. I've practiced here since 1999 here in Indiana, and I've got a law practice right there at Indiana and Main Street. So if anybody wants to come, in fact, I've had a few council folks stop by and talk to me about some of their concerns, and I've had that. I mean, that's a great opportunity to come up anytime. I'll talk to you, and we'll figure it out. But certainly, one of the things that I want to stress is that I'm going to be fair and equitable with everybody. But at the same point, if I issue an order, you will be held accountable.
All right. Let's go to Joe. We'll get his closing thoughts, and then we'll go over to Coach Zach at the end here.
Well, as far as holding people accountable, I wish I had the magic gavel that Dave has somewhere, because it's not as easy as it sounds. There's got to be resources for things, and I take the lead from the city. If the city is not pressing for, say, a demolition order, I'm not issuing the demolition order. So I. What I would
the demolition? What
it depends. Rain and Yield does some of them.
who pays for it?
City.
The city
does?
Yeah, the city through sometimes through grants, sometimes
The land bank is, I think, funded a couple. So, like some of those properties, I sit on the land bank committee. So some of those properties end up eventually, if they get through the courts and the city can take ownership of them, then the city at that point will take. Yeah, some of those properties, that's a
They
whole
have
other.
ways to recoup the money.
Yeah. So like the city will get it eventually. Whatever government has jurisdiction will end up with possession of it eventually, hopefully. But it takes a while. There's a process, and these people can't be found. And then, the city can then choose to demolish it, or if they give it to the land bank, then we try to sell it and recoup some money and get it on the tax rolls. That is a huge problem, though. Actually, they buy them online on tax sales, and then they're looking at a picture from like 1994 of the house, and like, that house looks fantastic. I picked it up for $800, and they found sometimes they found out it was demolished like 5 years ago, and there's nothing there.
Yeah, I've had people buy burnouts, sight unseen. They get there, and all it's just charred remains.
Well, that's irresponsible. But if you buy a property, then it's your responsibility to make sure that it's up to code.
Absolutely. And I tell people that every week, and they say, well, it's my tenants. My tenants are the ones junk it.
Yeah.
I said, city code makes both the landlord, the owner, and or the occupant is liable for the property. So usually I like to have both the landlords and the tenants in. And generally it's the deeper pockets are going to be the ones that get the work done. And then if the landlord has to deal with the tenant over that, then that's between them.
I would recommend people go look at the Google Street View, but if you're looking for the Google Street View up on US 36, it may be really blurred because of the high-speed chase a couple weeks ago.
Oh. But you asked about you could getting in touch with us. I've got an office I get to look out my window because the old cleaners got demolished. And so I get to look out my window and wave to Dave at his office.
We're friends.
Yeah. And so
now you guys are the outliers. You're not the downtown attorneys in town. You're the edge of downtown attorneys.
It's 2 blocks from the downtown.
I mean, not
I
quite.
don't know. Indiana and Maine is downtown.
Yeah. We've got
We're
parking.
both right there.
You're the fringe of downtown attorneys.
They're not hiding like
Lansinger
Sean
Law Office,
is.
Sadler Law Office, ample parking.
Ample parking. Yeah.
Ample parking.
Ample parking everywhere. But
if we could get our friend Jeremy to stop illegally parking everywhere, then we'd be a lot better. We got to worry about him. I mean,
Only
he's
you
a
knew a
habitual
city
parking
judge.
violator.
yes.
I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
But no, I look forward to having a 4th term. This 4th election means a lot to me because my dad was city court judge years ago, and he did it for 4 terms. So I'd like to be able to do the same
Consecutively?
He did, I
All right.
believe. I believe so.
I
And
took over after he retired.
yeah, well, and the reason he retired was because he didn't live in the city limits, but no one else wanted the job, and so no one made a stink. But then an opposing political party found out and made a stink, and he said, "I don't want to mess with that." So
It's fine.
John was a
You
good
want it, you
Democrat.
could have
He was a
it.
good Democrat.
I don't understand what the problem is. The mayor doesn't have to live in the city, so why is the judge?
no, he
Residency
right
is a
there,
state of
right
mind.
there on
Res-
11.
There we go.
Residency is a state of mind. It's a
What is the legal definition of residency?
We'd have to pull out the statute.
It doesn't come up-
Legal research on
doesn't
that.
come up in city court. Hey Zach, I wanted to congratulate you on your coaching. I went and visited this week at Memorial Park.
I saw you for 30 seconds.
Tuesday night. Zach had a whistle. It was very impressive.
I never
Cross
whistled.
country.
I had a stopwatch.
Oh, it looked like a whistle.
I don't whistle at anybody, but I do. All I had was a goal. My job was, and I was like, Jeremiah's like, so how's this going? I'm trying to explain it. Courses are always very complicated for cross country. I always joke. It looks like they, it looks like they gave cousin Eddie from National Lampoon, like they said, here, stay inside this box. Here's a lawnmower. Drive this far, and whatever he comes up with, that's your course. Because it usually crosses over itself. There's loops or whatever. But I had to get the mile one timer, the stopwatch that started with the gun before the runners got there. And I had a more direct route, but it still was like a little stressful. And so the minute the race started, I would just shotgun off. And then I think I ran a little over 3 miles. I did a 5K between the two races running around. So I did half the distance of the kids, or did the full distance that the kids did, but across 2 races, just running around. So yeah, girls won, great run, good weather. And thanks to all the other teams that showed up, I think Rushville.
There's Rushville, Cowan, Shenandoah,
Anderson Prep. And
Thank goodness we don't have to run a 5K to determine this race.
Yes.
Oh, that was the tiniest part of it. I spent
there's
so
a
much
5K
time.
this
I spent
weekend.
so much time at Memorial
Maybe
Park.
that's what we should do.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's
run it out.
Trial by combat.
So you guys, I did have a question. So,
Remember when Barry Bogart, there's a guy filed a motion in court, was it Circuit Court 1? He filed a motion for trial by combat, and he set out all these parameters that he would suggest that it would be a cage match between him and now prosecuting attorney Michael J. Mahoney. They would sell concessions, and they would. I think it said that if the defendant, if Barry won, he would donate the money to the Children's Miracle Network. I mean, and I don't think the judge, of course, didn't grant that motion.
Damn.
But
Let the
I've
gods
always
decide.
thought that like, maybe that could be.
I do have a question. Do you guys ever see like a new city ordinance and just roll your eyes, thinking this is going to be horrendous when it gets to you guys?
There's some that I saw recently that I thought, how was that not one before? Like the shooting bow and arrows in.
Oh, see, I was in for that meeting. People ruin everything, and so this guy was shooting and was using the neighbor's driveway as a backstop. So arrows were flying across this 85-year-old woman's driveway, and it was in the middle of it was in a subdivision like in Newcastle. It was shocking, but like some of the stuff I see, it's just like because I go to city council meetings, you see people come in, they have a complaint. Boom, 2 meetings later, there's an ordinance, and whatever they were complaining about, and that was one of them, is now illegal. And I'm like, and some of them, I'm like, that was a very clear one. But there's some that I'm like,
I think from a
That's gonna be
also
fun.
from a lawyer's standpoint is the drafting of the ordinance or the drafting of the.
as a judge, you have the ability to give like feedback at some point, or can you ask, like, can you guys clear this up? Because there's
Dave.
Well,
fogginess.
depending on if there's a case in front of you,
Yeah.
and let's say it's ambiguous or something like that. Certainly, a judge is going to rule that if it's ambiguous or hard to interpret,
They can't.
you
You
gotta
can't.
send
Yeah,
it
you
back.
can't be.
I'm not going to.
Yeah, you can't be held against
But
something.
the good thing
that's-
is we have a good city attorney here with Mr. Harvey and Mr. Copenhaver before that, who've really drafted a significant number of these ordinances, and they're very well drafted. So we don't have a lot of that problem here, but
Yeah.
state-wise, it does happen. And as a lawyer, that's one thing. That's one of the things you would argue.
One thing, if I could, insofar as this election goes, because and really any election, one thing that I would tell people to be cognizant of is the problems with voting a straight ticket. I think that oftentimes people don't, if they go in with the idea of voting a straight ticket, they don't educate themselves as much because there are good candidates on both sides, especially in these local elections. I think politics in the big grand scheme or the national scheme play a much smaller role here locally, whether it's citywide or countywide. And I think that there have been some people that would have done a very good job that would never get a chance simply because of what side, what letter comes after their name. And if people take the opportunity to research the candidates, research the issues, go in not with a straight ticket, but with the idea that they're going to look at the best candidate, then that's going to be better for everybody.
Agreed. And I think it was Tip O'Neill who said all politics is local. And our local races are really a lot about personality and the human beings and less about party, but certainly, you got to look at the individual.
Yeah, and I've always said that judicial positions should not
They really shouldn't be. I mean, politics really don't play a role in being a judge.
And every big-time judge that I've ever talked to said they always thought the same thing until they were elected, and then they're glad that it's partisan.
So
Yeah.
I will say this is we try to look past the party labels and everybody gets on the show. If you're on the ballot, we generally try to include the race and have the folks here and have the conversation and help our audience understand who's out there and who the names are that are on the ballot. But this is the first time that we've had a city election where you're going to have, if you vote that straight ticket vote this time, at-large races, you won't cast a vote at all. You're going to have to manually select in the at-large race. So when you get to your city council at-large, you're going to have to pick a name. It will not automatically fill it in for you. That's the way state law works now with at-large.
You got to pick two out of the.
Yeah, you can select two, but if you just say, hey, I'm going to choose team donkey or team elephant,
Right.
it will not fill in the at-large races, so you'll undervote that. So strongly encourage, go through. You can just flip through the page. Each page, there's not that many races. Look at the names, look at the folks, and hopefully you've been paying attention to the Boss Hog Liberty podcast and learn the candidates to help you get your way through. Anything last from you, Dakota?
I was just wish me luck on Saturday. I'm nervous as heck about it. So, yeah.
It's like the 9 o'clock temperature on Saturday is 58 degrees.
That's perfection.
You can't,
It'll be awesome.
with the 2-mile-an-hour breeze, can't complain there. So, yeah, good luck to all the people doing the mini marathon on Saturday. I'll be in Shelbyville at another meet, but it's good. We've had a nice stretch of good running weather. And then I think that the car show, the drive-in and fly-in at the Marlott Field is this weekend as well.
It is.
So check out for flyers around that. And if you're a race fan, IMSA is at IMS for the challenge at the Brickyard or something like that. I can't remember what it's called.
I'll be doing the IMSA thing all weekend.
Also
very
wanted to
excited.
Thank both of you guys for coming in.
Thank you
This
for
kicked
having
off our
us.
Thanks for
candidate
having us.
series. It was a good episode. I learned a lot on this one. I'm always appreciative of episodes where I learn.
Dakota jumps into everything full, just with 2 feet. I'm pretty sure he's probably now going to go get into law school, and just so he can
Try
run
my
for
hand at law.
Joe
Just-
said he
just so
hated
he
law
can
school.
run.
I love law school.
Really? Well,
I
I was-
loved every second of it.
The problem, what I didn't like about it was I was married. I got married before.
okay.
Most of the other students weren't.
Right.
If they were a lot older than me. If they were my age, they were not married. So it was balancing. And I got married like 3 weeks before the first day of class. So it's balancing
boy.
a new. And it was the first time that either my wife or I had lived outside of our parents' houses. And so you're balancing newly married life with
full intensity
with
of
full
law school.
intensity, and with kids that are wanting to law school to be kind of like round 2 of college. And
It's no joke.
And
Let me tell you, when
Yeah.
they say the guy on your left, look at the guy on your right, one of them's going to be gone. That's no joke.
Yeah.
That is no joke.
Well,
luckily I was the guy in the middle.
glad you guys both made it through.
Yeah.
Next week we will be back on Thursday. Zach has set up our first city council ward. You drew them out of a hat. Who's coming next week, Zach?
Jerry Walden and Cameron Grimm,
Which is Ward 3?
I believe.
4? It's not 4.
I think
it's not 4. I think it's
not
3.
4.
Yeah.
I think
Ward.
it's Ward 2.
Sure.
You got a whole week to find out.
Yeah, that's who's
It
coming.
might be because aren't
I-
they in order in the table? So Mike, Jeff, Jerry. I think it might be 3. I'm not sure, but it's Jerry. It's Jerry Walden, who's been on the show before, and then
Chris
we
Duffy
haven't
too.
had Cameron on for his other activities. So
Not yet.
Cameron will be first time.
We're looking forward to developing a long and happy
There'll be
relationship.
another week with the class of 2001 well represented because Joe graduated with me in high school, and so did Cameron. So
Every
We're
week,
everywhere, man.
Every week is the class of 2001.
We are everywhere.
I'm a class by myself. 01. The Blue River Dropouts. All right. We'll see you guys next week.